cheap people drive me up the wall. People that cling on and try to hoard and try to preserve, they're going backwards. When you're playing the game, sometimes you break an arm, sometimes you lose a tooth. Sometimes you embarrass yourself and miss an open net. I lost $1.5 million running 3 restaurants. I lost about $75,000 in a Played Against Sports franchise. I lost about $50,000 in a bookkeeping franchise. Temporarily lost the sight in my right eye. And it was 6 years of having to take everything I learned from the Brian Tracy's and Tony Robbins of the world to navigate through, still be a good father, perform at the best level I could while navigating what could have been a completely disastrous financial situation. And that comes from my deathbed mentality. Whether I drop dead and I'm worth $10 billion or $10 makes no difference. I just want to live, experience, push myself, lean into my fears, and meet some great people and try some new things. And at this stage of my life, I'm still doing the exact same thing.
Hello and welcome to another episode. Thank you for joining us. We have a very special guest here to have an incredible and an inspiring conversation. One of the most inspiring people that I can say that I know personally or just getting to know personally. We have Mr. Harry James here in studio. Thank you so much, Harry, for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Harry's an inspiring person, but comes from a very entrepreneurial background, rooted, I would say, at least currently rooted, some of his businesses throughout Markham, all along Main Street, Markham. You can't get too far without seeing Harry's name or HJG Group or HJ Group anywhere along the
You
line.
realize you set me up for failure. He's mentioned inspiring person twice. 3 minutes in this. What's so inspiring about this guy?
This
Moving
guy,
on.
he's a rock star, and we're gonna have a great conversation. So, getting right into it. I mean, I've been following along your message for a number of years, kind of in the background. I'm excited to have a conversation with you. Maybe you can tell people watching or listening, who is Harry? Tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started.
Oh, well, I came off the boat from Scotland in 1967. I moved to Canada. Graduated high school. I got accepted to 3 universities. Frankly, couldn't afford university. This concept of living on residence was completely foreign to me, so I decided just to get a job. Got a job at Canada Trust. I was working as a teller when I graduated and worked at Canada Trust downtown Toronto and faked it, walked around with a briefcase that had my lunch in the Toronto Sun. Got really good at walking around with papers, looking busy and perplexed, but worked in the corporate environment, did very well. I eventually got promoted to a trust officer within 4 years, but hated it. Hated being owned, hated having rules, hated not getting. I think I'd attended enough things and enough inspirational things and multi-marketing things to realize that whatever salary I was making, I was probably worth 8 or 9 times that to the company. And after really, talking to a few friends and people in sales and again, kind of feeding my mind, weeding and feeding my mind, I thought, you know what, I've got to go out on my own. And I went in to sell life insurance. And I remember we were actually, trust officer was a pretty good position. Well, it certainly was from a title standpoint. It wasn't great from an income standpoint, but we were entertaining some clients on a boat in downtown Toronto. And the senior vice president of Canada Trust, Jed Purcell, came up to me and said, "I heard you just resigned." I said, "Yeah, I'm going out on my own. I'm going to go into sales, build my own business." I said to him, "Do you have any idea how many people don't reach their full potential because they're not willing to take the risk?" And he looked at me and he said, "Do you have any idea, Harry, how many people take the risk and fail miserably?" And then he walked away. So that was my cheerleading from Canada Trust as I left. But spent 6 years in life insurance business, met some great people, was basically on straight commission from day one. And the one thing that was great about the life insurance business in the 80s was the training. I mean, I sat live under Zig Ziglar, Dennis Waitley, John Maxwell, and you're in the room with these guys and you're just, the potential, the excitement. And then you're with people that, are making in a week what I used to make in a year. And just that environment, the energy, and then not that again, money is everything, but it's just, it was about lifestyle, living your definition of success, having time with your friends, your family, being able to understand that the most important asset you have is time, and the more margin you can have in your life, the more you're going to enjoy your journey. So that was the environment I was in for 6 years, and saw the writing on the wall and decided to hang a shingle on Main Street, Markham. In 1993, I bought a franchise of Ross Dixon Financial. That just gave me a vehicle, a conduit for more products in the financial services area. And I remember, again, and Ralph, from speaking to me, that I'm a big fan of planning, always have been. I went up north now, give you an idea, in 1993, I had 3 children. I was making 120 grand a year when I left. My net worth was 0. I needed 120 grand a year to live. I rented from first-class guy, Mr. Vince Kwok on Main Street. I had to spend $60,000 to set up the space. I was living on a line of credit. I borrowed $50,000 from a family friend, and, went up to a planning session at Deerhurst with, my phenomenal guy, Andrew McCulley, who became my manager, worked for me for $100 a week, and we sat at this little dining room table, and we just on one piece of paper, what's our vision? We wanna have $100,000,000 under administration in 5 years. I just pulled that number out of the air because I thought 100,000,000 was a cool number. And, again, I won't bore you to death, but 5.5 years later, we had $100,000,000 under administration, full staff. My vision was to have salaried, educated people that would dispense advice that was in the best interest of the client, no matter where the transaction took place. In other words, not direct commission selling. And, that caught the attention of a public company, and we were bought out in 2007. So, and along the way, the most important thing is I live with a deathbed mentality, so that's the monopoly game. I always look at business and making money as monopoly, but through that time, my wife and I just celebrated our 40th anniversary last May. But through that time, raised the kids, coached soccer, coach what I loved about moving to Markham, I lived on German Street just around the corner. I could walk to work. Even though I was working 3 nights a week, I could be home at the dinner table every night at 5 o'clock for a couple hours with my kids. And, I was able to coach every single team because I was so close. So, while I was building the business and working hard and playing the game to win, I was able to not sacrifice the most important thing in my life because money you can make more of, time you can never get it back. So, I was able to log that time with my family, with my children. It was probably one of the biggest blessings in my life.
To compound that, time you can never get it back, but especially, I mean, we talk about our own time and what you do with every minute you have. That's one thing, but time with your kids, especially at that early age, man, that's
Listen, for any young people listening, and I want and really this is the don't listen to anything else I say on this podcast except for this. Don't ever not do something with your children because you say you can't afford it. I poured my children into our station wagon every April and drove them down to Florida. All the teachers would say, "Why don't you go and march when everybody else goes?" And I was thinking, "You know what? You raise your kids, I'll raise mine." We went down in April, to Florida. And I put the whole now I was on straight commission, I put the whole thing on my MasterCard, and the whole way down, I was thinking, "This is the best investment I'm making." And you know what? You can't legislate quality time. Quality time comes from quantity time. You get your young kids in a car for 26 hours, you have to endure 25 hours of fighting and not listening, but you get an hour of magic or 5 minutes of magic where you really connect on a meaningful level. Those memories last forever. I can tell you the bulk of my net worth started when I was probably north of, late 40s.
good. I still have a chance.
Listen, it's never too late. I believe I don't care who you are. There's people start businesses in their 60s, 70s. People win Pulitzer prizes writing their first novels in their 90s. Attitude is everything. Hope and a great excitement for the future, no matter what age and stage of life, is everything. But again, I want to encourage any young people listening that are raising kids. Don't say we'll do it later. Don't say we'll do it when we can afford it. Don't do that. Live your life upside down. Make your priorities. Have a deathbed mentality. If you were looking back at 95 years old, what are you going to regret? And I'll tell you, you'll regret not investing in your children, not taking your elderly parent for a cup of tea, not making memories. Money you can make at any point in your life. Time is the most precious asset and the only thing worthy of being involved.
Yeah, it's interesting, your mindset, and I think it's so inspiring that the idea of having a plan, preparing, living what I call purposeful life. And I look for patterns. I'm a student of Tony Robbins. I look for patterns in the people that I admire, and the idea of living near your work, the idea of being in control of your own fate and your own success and your own failure, and the idea of living a purposeful life. I think is bang on, in terms of my core beliefs. Some of the most successful people I know, they don't drive 2.5 hours to work. They walk to work. They take a short drive because they realize the value of that time. And now, if you think about it, you were on commission based, so you may have been spending time prospecting through the day. Well, the time that you were driving would have been very expensive, not prospecting time. And that's the way that I see it. I try to run my business in the same mindset, being as hyper local as I can be. I want to eat, play, and have fun in the same place, right?
Absolutely. And listen, I've got my black belt in failures. I really do. And it's where you learn the most. But even for those people listening that don't have the luxury, because it took me from '84 until 1993 until I could make that transition to being close to home. I was commuting up to then, I was commuting 2.5, 3 hours a day, and I was traveling 60,000 kilometers a year in my little car trying to sell life insurance, but I remember hearing from, again, a very, very wise individual, "Make your car a classroom." So while I was driving those 60,000 kilometers, Ralph, here's what I was doing. Uh, I had Tony Robbins in the car. I had Dennis Waitley. I had John Maxwell. I had Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, and Brian Tracy, who I also saw live on more than one occasion. And when you're basking in that, when that's being embossed on your brain for 60,000, it becomes a knee-jerk reaction. And so you're training your mind, and people say, "Eat well and train your body." Absolutely. But 1,000 times more important is your mind has to be protected. Thoughts are real, and they get planted in your DNA. If you don't weed and feed that mind, if you don't have guards on your mind, you are subject to being watered down by the masses. Look, we spend billions of dollars to have virus protection on computers, yet we'll walk around like the city sewer with our minds wide open, accepting everything and rejecting nothing, and it manifests itself in misery. We really have to, as people that want to develop, want to create things, want to accomplish things, I think managing your mind is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, and another common thing that I see in the way that you run your life is constant positive, focus and growth. You know, the idea of abundance mindset, the idea of constantly learning. I love the idea of weed and feed. Get rid of the bad things, get rid of the negative thoughts, get rid of the toxins in your thought process and what you're dreaming about, and then focus on what you're trying to work towards.
Yeah, and I think, and what I refer to that is not being a pop can on the wave of circumstance, and that's why my vital signs philosophy has become very important to me. Now, people listening might say, "Easy for you, Harry, easy for you, Ralph. You guys are doing well, and you don't have any problems." Wrong. If you're alive, you have problems. I've got people very close to me that have mental health issues. I've got people very, very close to me that are not well. People very close to me that are suffering financially, and I care deeply, but I still have an obligation as a human being to perform at an optimum level, notwithstanding the circumstances. And you develop that internal strength by having a philosophy, and my philosophy is very simple, is you have to focus on nurturing your inner circle relationships. You have to have meaning in your life. You have to push your body physically and mentally to be the best version of itself every day, and you need to be heading in the right direction financially, not wealthy, not having stress, but just be heading in the right direction. And when you monitor those 4 vital signs on a regular basis and make sure they're at least a 7 or 8 out of 10, it puts you in a position to perform at an optimum level, notwithstanding what's going on around you. Because if you're gonna fold like a pup tent or get in the fetal position and suck your thumb because you have a failure or because you have a problem or because somebody close to you is hurting, then you will constantly be in a level of stress that will make it literally impossible for you to achieve what you're trying to achieve in your life.
I don't remember the author of the book, but, in a book club I was in, we read, Championship Mindset, and it was interesting. They looked at champions and, mostly in sports. It's easy to call someone a champion in sports, but in life, it's a little bit harder. But they would interview golfers and after they, play around the golf, in the interview, they would say, "Well, what happened when you missed that shot in the 3rd hole?" And the golfer's like, I didn't miss a shot. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, they should immediately eliminate,
Yes.
a negative thought, they're like, "There's a challenge, there's a problem." I'm sure in the moment, they're really upset. Immediately gone. We call it the goldfish mindset, right? In the movie, the show Ted Lasso, they say the best, footballers or soccer players have a memory like a goldfish. I think Pep said that to famous coach.
Absolutely, and there's always that next moment. I failed miserably. I don't, again, wanna bore your listeners, but I had a big speaking gig in Rome, in front of 650 of my peers from all over the country, all over the world, and I had a panic attack on stage, lost my saliva, made a complete fool of myself, and failed miserably, and that ate away at me for years. But the reality is, we have to take those things in life and recognize that that's the past. And the old analogy is the windshield is 10 times bigger than the rear, and too often we hold ourselves back by living yesterday's news.
Yeah, I don't wanna backtrack or the flow of this, but I want to jump in with a quick story about Brian Tracy. You mentioned you saw Brian Tracy, who I love. I watched him live, and I remember I must have been 24 years old, and I put on my best suit. I used to work at Tip Top Tailors when I was in,
Oh,
university.
yeah, really?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
used to go there all the time. Actually, I don't know if you remember Stitches. You get like 4 suits for like $69.
So
That's where I
it comes
shop.
with a belt. Comes with
Yeah,
a belt
a
built
belt,
in, yeah.
a shirt, a tie. The only thing they didn't come with is the shoes.
And, so I worked at Tip Top, and then I was, in my early 20s, went to go see Brian Tracy, and, this was back, I don't know what it was, 15 years ago. Um, he finishes his talk, he says, "Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. Everyone back in 15 minutes." And I said, "Perfect." I had to run to the bathroom, so I get up, I start walking to the bathroom. Brian Tracy comes off the stage, and I can see he's behind me, and I was, "Oh my gosh." I was admiring this guy for 4 hours this morning, and now he's right behind me. I'm like, "Man." So I run to the bathroom, and he's still behind me. I open up the bathroom door, he's still behind me. I said, "Oh my gosh, this guy's coming to the bathroom." I mean, obviously, 150 people went to the bathroom in this tiny window, and I go and I stand at the urinal, and he stands right beside me. I said, "Oh my god," my heart's racing. I said, "What am I gonna say to this guy? Can I talk to him?" Like, it's like a social norm not to talk in the bathroom. So I'm looking forward, just, and from the peripheral, I see this guy, and at the time he must have been in his late 70s or so. Takes off his probably $5,000 suit, undoes his belt, drops his pants to the floor, and it starts texting as he's at the urinal. And I thought, this is the best time management, how to stack your time efficiently. I said, I've been wasting all this time at the bathroom. And I said, he's just multitasking in perfection. So I said, even in the bathroom, you can learn something
Oh,
from
yeah.
these guys.
In some bathrooms, you get arrested.
Yeah, I guess now that was BlackBerry times, but so, yeah, it's interesting. So now, as an entrepreneur, you've had lots of experiences, like, and that's what I love about the way you think, is that you're not someone that found success in one way. You found success is kind of like, I see you as the decathlon. That's the person that I think is the best athlete in the Olympics, is not the best sprinter or the high jump or weightlifter. The person that can do 10 and win. There's a guy, Michael Smith, in the 90s. It was a big American.
But let's be careful with the word win. So I honestly look at, again, and this is in this no, in the spirit of being authentic though. So I have had some miserable failures, and I've made a lot of really bonehead decisions, and I don't dwell on them. But I don't know any game that you play. I'm a competitive person. One of the things I feel very fortunate about is I'm as competitive and as curious and as passionate at 63 as I was at 23. It's just thankfully the way I'm built. And I think, well, this is a fact. Human beings are meant to be productive. We're either progressing or regressing. That's why retirement should come with a warning label. It should look like cigarette smoking. The human body just knows whether it's needed or not. Now, the way I've compartmentalized my life is simply this. The Monopoly game, I'm an entrepreneur. That's the sport I play. I wasn't good enough to play in the NHL. I wasn't good enough to play in the Premier League. So I chose entrepreneurialism as my sport. Now, Ralph, there's not one sport where you would watch your team that they're going to win every game. And as a matter of fact, when you're playing the game, sometimes you break an arm, sometimes you lose a tooth, sometimes you embarrass yourself and miss an open net. And so in my game, I lost, and I'm gonna try to again be very, clear here. I lost, about 75,000 dollars in a Played Against Sports franchise. I lost about $50,000 in a bookkeeping franchise. I lost $1.5 million, running 3 restaurants, for, 6 years. And I finally pulled over with my partner one day. Thankfully, we were good at real estate. Real estate was funding the restaurants, and I said, "Listen, we're shutting these down now." We always thought next week, the chef, if we had a better chef, we have better music, we have be and I just said, "No, no, no, this has to stop." Um, I in real estate, my first real estate development, the first phase went well, the second phase almost bankrupted me. As a matter of fact, I was under so much stress with my partner that we had a disagreement that I actually temporarily lost the sight in my right eye. And it was a 6 years of having to take everything I learned from the Brian Tracys and Tony Robbins of the world to navigate through, still be a good father, still kind of perform at the best level I could while navigating what could have been a completely disastrous financial situation. So again, in the spirit of being authentic, yes, you could look at my website. Well, actually, we have a lot of failures on the website, and you could look at Red Brick, and you could look at the town hall, and you could look at some of these buildings where we've done very well. And Harry James Financial, where we've done very well. But in that game to get there, there was a price to pay. There was mistakes that have been made. And to me, the most important thing is, yeah, play. Because as I think I've said to you before, I would rather die playing the game than fade away in the stands. And that comes from my deathbed mentality. Whether I drop dead and I'm worth 10 billion or 10 bucks makes no difference. I just want to live, experience, push myself, lean into my fears, and meet some great people and try some new things. And at this stage of my life, I'm still doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, interesting. And I know we've spoke about, and you've done, a couple of different videos or talks about the idea of 306,000. Do you want to tell some of the people listening out there your idea of, what does 306,000 mean to you? Why is that number important?
Yeah, well, I often actually it's slipped down now since then. It's probably, I think it's 258,000, but I often start when I have the privilege of mentoring or doing a workshop with some people, which I enjoy doing, and there's nothing more satisfying than inspiring, encourage people and saying, "Hey, I felt like a failure too. I fell on my face too. Um, I was scared too. I felt inadequate too." So I often start my workshops by putting, 258,000 up on the board. And I'll say, does anybody want to guess what this is? And they'll guess, balance my bank account or whatever. And I'll say, no, this is the most important asset I have. If I have the privilege of living until 90 years old, that's exactly how many hours I have left. And I'm withdrawing two to be with you today. So I want them to be authentic and meaningful. But no matter what, you could be lying in the hospital with $10 billion in the bank, and you could ask the doctors to buy 60 seconds more to say bye to your family, and it's not available. Recognize what's important in your life. Have margin, have guardrails. Don't waste your time. Don't make decisions out of guilt and obligation. Don't do it just because. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Step back. Take the time to really figure out who you are, what you want, what experiences. The problem is today, we get too much influence from people to our left, our right, our families. No, have the intestinal fortitude to really look in the mirror and say, who am I? What do I want? What do I want to experience? And most importantly, what can I contribute to maybe make the world a better place? How can I leave people better than I found them? In other words, make money a byproduct of doing something meaningful. Make money a byproduct of doing the right thing. When you pursue money, when you pursue power, it eludes you. I don't know about you, Ralph. Cheap people drive me up the wall. People that cling on and try to hoard and try to preserve, they're going backwards. When you have an abundance mentality, when you recognize there's lots more, when you do the right thing, when you're generous, some pretty magical things happen.
Yeah, I agree, and I love the idea of being aware of the cost of time, that it is finite. It's a finite resource, drives me crazy. And I'm guilty 100% of it, but I hate in our society. I love social media allows us to connect, but it connects in such a superficial way. I love this. I hate the fact that it's a huge hole in society's time bucket, how much time we spend on social media, and that, it's wasted. And, I look at my kids, sometimes they're, watching TV and they're on their phones, and I understand that that's part of a childhood is to veg out after, 8 hours at school. But I'm saying that's such an important time that we're just throwing in the garbage. There's nothing to show for your time on Facebook last week. Nothing, 0.
No, but here's the problem. We're all addicted.
Yeah.
And what happened with COVID is it gave everybody the excuse to be lazy. Like I got somebody canceled an appointment on me this week because there was 2 centimeters of snow. And I'm thinking, we live in freaking Canada, people. Like everything's become an excuse. Now people want to sit in their underwear and do Zoom calls. I don't want Zoom calls. Do you know why, Ralph? Because energy is real and energy doesn't go through a computer screen. 98% fact, 98% of human communication is nonverbal. You're not picking it all up through a computer screen. So I believe in so many ways we've gone backwards and we're going backwards. So yeah, when you were able to say, no, 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 like somebody will say to me, Zoom meeting, and I'll say, no, please drive out to see me or we'll meet somewhere, but we're not going to accomplish the same thing. Like maybe a Zoom to say, hey, did you get the same? That's fine. But it's become a way of being lazy and we're missing out on the most important thing, which you just alluded to, is human connection.
Yeah, I believe that your energy speaks before you do. A game I play with my kids sometimes while we're out, and if we have a little bit of time, maybe we're, a long lineup at Walmart or something like that. I'll say, I'm going to start a conversation with someone. And they say, "Who?" And I look around, and there's something inside of me. I'm not sure if seeing them or feeling it. I can feel energies from different people. And I said, "I'm going to talk to that person." I could tell their energy is open, and I'll walk right up to them and we'll have a conversation about something, whether it's what they're purchasing or it could be anything at all. And I think that you lose that when you're masked and you're sitting here, like cattle in kind of a trough on Zoom. And, on one hand, it becomes more effective, but in 95% of the time, it becomes less
Oh,
effective.
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna
I'm
say more
in-person guy.
yeah, it depends, but, listen, I'm not saying this to stroke your ego, but I walk in your office today, everybody's got a great energy, everybody's very positive, everybody's up. You can't manufacture that. Like, that comes from who you are, your DNA, what you're reading, what you're feeding your mind, what your perspective is, what your attitude is. Attitude is everything. It's still today, 2024, attitude is still everything, folks, like, it really is. You can try to mask it with it, but attitude is everything, so you've been in a room when somebody walks in and just completely kills it. They have this dour energy and their body language, and but you also have that person to walk in a room and it lights up like a Christmas tree. It's real.
Yeah. So let me ask you a couple questions. What are you reading right now?
I read every day.
Or either what you're reading right now. Well, first, what are you reading right now?
Oh,
And I was
you
going to
and I,
ask what's your
yeah,
favorite one to read.
you and I have talked about this. So I study. When I read, that's entertainment, like going to a movie. When I'm doing my reading, which I do every single day and have done since my 20s, I'm weeding and feeding my mind. I'm changing my programming. This is directly from Bob Proctor, and I'm stealing it, but I believe it to be true. We are one-third our DNA, our parents getting together, and we're two-thirds the experiences we've had and the people we've met. So that's your complete programming. Now, when you have that programming, for anybody listening, and you all of a sudden say, "Well, I'm gonna become an entrepreneur and make $1,000,000," it's 1,000% doable, but you have to change your programming. You have to change your paradigm. This goes right back to Maxwell Maltz and cyber psycho psychonology, whatever it's called.
Sure, we can check that out.
Cybernetics, sorry.
Cybernetics.
Psycho-cybernetics. So, every day, I'm reading something to make sure that the automatic response to negativity, the automatic response to challenges is something that's going to allow me to overcome. So, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, which was written in the early 1900s, is just completely full of how incredibly powerful the thought processes are and how your thoughts and the thoughts you manifest create your reality. Again, I don't think there's a lot of people that would debate with that are in the personal development field. So I spend a lot of time there. I spend a lot of time with Bob Proctor's material. And again, what's cool is all of this is free. Like, I know, I haven't been to a Tony Robbins seminar. No. Um, Certainly I've listened to his tapes. Certainly I've read a few of his books. But my point is, you don't have to spend 10 or 15 or 20,000. Everything, the cool thing about the internet when you use it positively is everything's there for free.
But
You
here's
just
the
have to
problem
make
with it,
sure.
is if you don't and we were talking about it, just before we went live, is that if there's no value to what you're purchasing, or which is you're spending with your time, but there's no dollar cost, you don't absorb it as much. I think the idea of a $10,000 conference, what's amazing about it, people will approach it with the value of this is $10,000. Now, you could take Tony Robbins' Business Mastery Program and put it on a DVD or on YouTube. Would the people approach it with the same intensity and intention? That's the hook. I hate the fact that it's a fire hose of information on the internet, and we don't value any of it because it's all ubiquitous. It's just everywhere.
I totally agree with you, and you have to take it in bite-sized pieces, but I think the key component, whether you go to and I'm not discounting Tony Robbins workshops because I hear they're absolutely phenomenal, but the point is, one of my favorite quotes is, "Desire without discipline leads to depression." Desire without discipline leads to depression. So if you have the desire to become better at something or to lose weight or to get in great shape, but you don't have the discipline to do what's necessary, the activities to achieve that, then you're gonna put yourself down and feel lousy. Desire becomes the white hot fuel, which creates the discipline for the execution. So, anybody that's listening, my question would be, do you truly have a white hot burning desire to change, to become a millionaire, to have a better marriage, to be a better person, to try to change, create a charity that's going to change the world? Do you really have that desire, or is it just a passing thought that's going to be knocked off to the side the minute somebody says, let's go for some beer and wings. So it's that desire that's critical. But when you have that desire, whether you're mining and gleaning the information from the internet or attending a workshop, it's that desire that's going to give you that discipline to make the steps necessary to achieve whatever it is that you're after.
I agree 100%. I agree that you require the desire, and the desire will hopefully create the discipline. But I think there's something about a self confidence that, you know what, if you have more voices in your head saying you can't do this than the voices in your head that say you can do this, then the confidence goes down and the action is lost, and an idea without action is worthless.
Absolutely, but that you can't do this comes from the paradigm you're baked in programming. Look, you go to your computer out in the office here and you ask it to spit something out, it's spitting out what's programmed. And, we do, as human beings, subliminally sabotage ourselves. Have you ever heard anybody say, I can't pull off that car? Well, what that really means is I'm not worthy of that car. I can't pull off that outfit. I could never live in a house like that. Well, why? It's their self-image, or they've been taught money is evil, or
It's who they think they are. It's the ego is the most powerful force in the world.
absolutely. So if you're going to change, then you have to change that programming. The only way you can change programming is with study and repetition. And by the way, repetition of the same material on a regular basis, not reading 700 books and getting information, because information without execution is absolutely useless.
Absolutely. And I think something you said a few times here is, the people you surround yourself by. And I think that's really powerful too, because they become the guardrails for you. I'm very grateful. I think I have some of the best friends in the world, and they've helped me, they've encouraged me. I try my best to do the same for them. And without them, without, of course, my wife is the first one, being a supporter and being with me. I mean, I met my wife in grade 3. I fell in love with her in grade 4, and, we got married at 24. I was married. And we got
23.
yeah, and you know what? I remember I was in the 3rd grade. We had moved from Scarborough to Markham, and in grade 3, I was petrified. I mean, nobody likes change, especially, and something that we're very, very sensitive for, being a real estate company, is the impact of a move on the whole family. Now, mom and dad say, "Hey, we're gonna move for X, Y, and Z. I want a bigger pantry. I want a bigger kitchen. I want a 2-car garage," whatever it is they want. Well, kids feel comfortable with whatever space you give them. Really, I've seen kids in rooms that are 6 feet by 8 feet, and they love it. That's their nest, their feeling of safety. And then from a kid's point of view, a move is very hostile. They don't have any choice in the matter. They just get picked up and brought to the new place. And so we do our best to coach parents on how to kind of transition the best we can for kids and pets. But I remember in the 3rd grade, I moved in to Markham, and a new school where I got to meet my wife and some of my best friends. And in grade 4, we're sitting at lunch beside each other, and she says, "What did your mom make for lunch?" And I open up my lunch box, and I've got a mortadella sandwich with a long crusty bun probably from Reamerville Bakery, and and a can of Coke. I don't know. Yeah, it's
Soaking with tuna, you guys eat.
yeah. And my wife opens up her lunch, and she's got, beautiful sandwich, multiple things in there. The crusts are cut off, some vegetables and some cut fruit and a yogurt. And I said, "Wow, your mom made that for breakfast or for lunch?" She goes, "No, I made my lunch." We're in grade 4. I said, "You made your lunch this morning?" She goes, "Every morning I wake up, I make my lunch, I make my sister's lunch, and I help out with my brother's lunch." And I said, "Wow." And at that moment, I had the aha. I said, "I'm going to marry you." I said, "If in grade 4 you can make a better lunch than my mom," I said, "That's the type of
Now there's some long
that's
term
my
there's some
visionary."
long term planning. Look, it's so powerful. And again, this isn't new information, but it's the company you keep.
Yeah.
If you're not a drug addict and you hang out with 5, you'll be the 6th. If you're not a drunk and you hang out with 5, you'll be the 6th. And if you're not in great shape, but you hang out with 5 athletes, you're going to get yourself in great shape. It's incredibly powerful. What I often say to people, I'm 63 years old. You know how when we send our kids to kindergarten, we say, listen, be careful the company you keep. It's more important when you're 63, because there's too many 60s and 70 and 80-year-olds that think the best is behind, the best deals, the best relationships, the best health, the best vitality, and they're sitting around talking about what cholesterol pills they take. And if that's the company that you're keeping in your 60s and 70s, take a look around and change your company, because with the right attitude, with the right perspective, 60 to 90 can be just as exciting as 0 to
So how do you do that then? So imagine somebody who's in the wrong crowd. They want something different. There's some, unhappiness, dissatisfaction in their life, whether it's fitness, finance, mindset, family, whatever it is,
Yeah.
getting rid of a habit. how can you what would you recommend to, someone listening right now? They wanna get into a new circle,
Yes.
a new community, a new environment. Like, what's the best way for them to
Well, it's
infiltrate?
attention. Let's go back to desire, Ralph. Let's go back to desire. If there's a true desire to improve their life, so what areas? Again, let's look at relationships, spiritual, and I know I'm talking about religion. I'm talking about meaning in your life. Like you have to have meaning in your life. So and then you look at your physical and mental health, and you look at your finances. So if you look at those four quadrants, which one or ones are you incredibly unhappy with? Now, in each of those quadrants, S take a look around. Who do you see that seems to be doing much better than you in that particular field? Pick up the phone, energy, ask them for coffee. Vulnerability is a prerequisite to growth. "Hey, Ralph, listen, I gotta tell you something, man. I've been plugging away at real estate for 5 years now. I just seem to be hitting my head against the wall. I'm seeing you, the way you deal with your clients, the growth of your company, the things people say about you. Ralph, I really want to perform at a level similar to yours. Would you mind sharing with me some things that I could do to get on a better trajectory? Hey, Ralph, listen, I got 30 pounds to lose, man. My doctor just told me I have to go on cholesterol pills. I notice that, like, the way you carry yourself, your commitment to exercise, the triathlon you did last year, like, can I ask you, please? I would love to figure out how do I start? I'm so intimidated. I don't even know how to swim a length. Hey, Ralph, I've noticed that like you've been married for 30 years and you and your wife seem so happy. I don't mind telling you, like, we're kind of playing house at my place. Like we're almost cohabitating. Like, what's the secret to this vibrancy that you guys seem to have in your marriage? See, when we leave ourselves vulnerable and when we find a role model that people love helping other people when it's sincere. Anybody came to me and said, "Harry, can I learn from your failures?" or "How did you overcome this?" Listen, I'm excited to contribute something that might help somebody else enjoy their journey more or get more out of their journey. And you know what? Most human beings are that way. But what we do is we say, Ralph would never talk to me. Look how successful. Why would he talk to me? And that's nonsense. Like, you pick up the phone and you have access to more powerful information and people than you could even dream of.
For sure, and I think that there's an element of, uh, if you're looking for something, it appears, and if you're looking for a model in either of those categories, and you're really thinking and you're intentional about it, and I think journaling helps too because it solidifies what you're thinking. You say, "I wanna improve in this aspect." That I think that the mentor, they say, "When the student is ready, the teacher appears." In my own perspective, I've always looked with similar, I mean, maybe different titles of the categories, the 4 categories you talk about, but for me, one of the prerequisites to find a mentor is they have to be doing, at minimum, pretty good in the other categories. Having someone as a financial mentor who weighs 350 pounds and is divorced 6 times and has no connection with, spirituality in any way, I don't wanna model that. So I am always conscious of I wanna model someone that's excellent in a category, but they have to support other aspects of your life because I think, life is like a wheel. And if you're, have a 10 out of 10 on one and a 3 out of 10 on another and a 2 out of 10 on another category and a 6 out of 10 on the fourth, the wheel doesn't turn.
No, and Ralph, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but we're obsessed with fame, and the world seems to have a one-dimensional definition of success called money. And that's the reality. I mean, take a look around. How many Instagrams or videos do you see with a guy who's rented a private plane sitting there in front of his Ferrari? I mean, it's so shallow and superficial. It's almost humorous. And anybody listening right now should think about what's your true definition of success. Now, my definition of success has always been that I'm putting my hand to something I believe in, and that money is a byproduct to allow me to live a lifestyle that's satisfactory to me and my family. That's it. It doesn't matter to me what your income level is. I have to ask myself, am I generating the lifestyle for me and my family that we are happy with? And I'm not talking about compromise. So if that lifestyle happens to be for somebody, I need $1 million a year because I want a 50,000 square foot mansion to bring and help all my friends. And that's awesome. If somebody wants to buy a Ferrari because they love the way they're put together, my business partner's a Ferrari fanatic, not because of the he's been a Ferrari guy since he knows how they're built, he knows how they perform. They're works of art to him. It's passion. He's buying it like purity of motive is key. If you're pursuing something, ask yourself what the motive is. If the motive is, "Hey, look at me," see a therapist. If the motive is, "I sincerely want that for all the right reasons," then go for it, and you don't have to worry about what anybody else says. But I totally agree with you. You've gotta go well beyond finances to talk about what a well-rounded life and successful life like. I'm not taking fitness advice from somebody 300 pounds sucking on a Coke. It's not gonna happen. I need somebody to lead for me, show me they've done it too.
Let me ask, talking about fitness, I heard that you're, quite a athlete.
You listen, my goal is to age well. I work out 7 days a week.
Did you always do that?
Yes, 2 promises I made. I could take you to the spot. I'm walking home from Lamoureux Collegiate, 1980. Just graduated grade 13 to show you how old I am. I'm walking down Finch Avenue, about to hop the fence to my backyard at an Apache Trail. I made 2 promises to myself. I'm always gonna stay in shape, and I'm always gonna like what I'm doing. Now, I haven't been perfect, but those 2 things have always been on my mind. They're frames of reference. So, I'm trying to age well. I got no problem with aging. The alternative's not good. So I celebrate birthdays. Not having one is not good. But I believe physiologically, one of the best books I read, Ralph, is called Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, and it makes the case that we can be as healthy and vibrant in our 90s as we are in our 40s and 50s. The body needs certain things: VO2 max, bone density, muscle strength. And if you push your body, again, we're meant to progress. If you push it physically and mentally every day, it will be really, really good to you. So I push my body 7 days a week. I do weights 3 times. I do high intensity training. I do triathlons, and I also hike probably 4 or 5 hours a week. And and actually what I love about Atia's book is, you know how people get all caught up in diets and do this and don't do that? He's saying head and shoulders above, if exercise was a pill, it would be the most successful pharmaceutical drug in the history of the world. Exercise trumps everything as long as you're pushing yourself. So there's some people my age say, "I exercise, I walk around the block every night." That's called functioning, okay? But when you really push yourself, you can stack the odds in your favor for really enjoying every chapter of your life.
And you talk about the relationship between mind and body, and I mean, I know for me, if I got a good workout in the morning and I'm in the zone, and you had that moment of focus, which is what I look for when I'm working out, is a time when everything disappears. If I can get, like, I love playing soccer because, when I'm running up for the ball, I played yesterday, a ball came in the air and I headed it. In that moment while I'm heading the ball, there's nothing else exists. And to me, that's meditation. That's purity.
It's being in your flow. I used to soccer was my game actually, and, I absolutely loved it, but you're absolutely right. You're in your flow.
And that preps me for that primes me for the day. It primes me for learning, primes me for the right attitude in my approach, and everything seems possible if I've done the hardest thing early in the morning.
It's like paying yourself first. If you, uh if your taxes went up 5%, you wouldn't have a choice. Whether you have money or not, somebody out there says, if you have debt, you shouldn't save. That's nonsense. Pay yourself first always. I don't care how much you owe. Always sock something away for yourself. Psychologically, it is tremendously important. When you pay yourself first physically and push your body, you, Ralph, are a better husband, a better father, a better leader. You're thinking clearer. You're more calm. You have more peace. You sleep better. I could go on and on and on. The dividends are astronomical. But again, how many times you hear people say, "I'm too busy. I just haven't a chance to get to the gym. Oh, I can't pay. I've got this bill. I can't." No, no. I will wait. I'll make other bills wait. I have to pay myself. That's how compounding interest, that's how wealth building works.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I know that you were in Markham for, almost 30 years, and
38.
you just moved outside. We miss you. But I'm curious, in terms of Main Street Markham, Markham as a city, where do you see the vision? Where are we going? From a visionary who's seen it, where do you think we're going?
Well, first of all, Markham's been amazing to me and my family. I mean, all 4 of my kids went to the same school, the same high school. As a matter of fact, the principal mentioned my wife and I when my daughter, who's 22 now, graduated, saying we're the longest service serving parents, in that particular school. But, Markham's been awesome to us. I still have all my businesses on Main Street Markham. I come down to Markham every single day. And, we just moved to Uxbridge because Uxbridge to us was like Markham was 38 years ago. Um, but in terms of a community, I mean, think about it, almost 400,000 people, every amenity you could probably imagine. Great restaurants, great services, a great you got little pockets, like I was just at the Markham Prayer Breakfast. You got a whole pile of people from all walks of life saying, "Hey, we want the best community. We wanna treat each other with respect. We wanna honor each other." There's a real great fabric in this community, and there always has been. where it's going, I mean, in reality, Markham has become part of Metro now, which is kinda cool because it puts you in a position if, people will complain about Markham's traffic, but you really, if you position yourself right, could probably walk to everything you need, right? And then drive when when things are a little quieter, but I think, it will continue to grow, continue to develop. We see condos going up. It's certainly gonna be an outstanding real estate investment. The GO train schedule, I had to go downtown, the other day for an appointment. The GO train schedule was phenomenal, so convenient. Yeah, absolutely, what a great way to travel. It's gonna continue to grow, real estate prices. Listen, I believe, and you didn't ask me this question, but I'll put it out here there anyway as an opinion. I've been investing in real estate for 40 years, and I've been through cycles, and I believe we're in, this is, I believe, the 3rd sideways market that I've been in. And sideways market being that things are gonna go sideways for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Great market to invest in until incomes catch up, until sanity, reclaims, and then there'll be another spike where everybody has selective memory, and they don't realize that, competing for real estate is not a good idea, but it's gonna happen. But this is gonna be a beautiful real estate market for anybody that's looking to invest in Markham, live in Markham. I don't I would say probably this is one of the best times and will be the best time over the next number of years to get into the real estate market.
Interesting. So you think we're looking at a sideways market in real estate in terms of pricing? I mean, when you say sideways, generally you're talking about
I'm talking
pricing.
about pricing,
So you
yeah.
think sideways for the next 5 years? That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it before, it's happened before. When people start saying things that defy logic, like, there's no downside to real estate, it'll always go up, they're not making any more land. I love the immigrant story, like, last time I checked, we're not, immigrating everybody that's got, like, $5 million. Like, we have immigrants that are coming to make a better life for themselves. They need to be able to have their incomes qualify them for a mortgage. I mean, look at what they did with the gross debt service ratio. This is I've been borrowing money for a long time. This is the toughest borrowing environment that I've seen in my life. And the other problem is, and I'm gonna a real shot at the banks here, they don't care. All they care about is their shareholders and their salaries and managing downside risks. I've presented deals to the bank they couldn't lose if their life depended on it, and all they look at is their numbers, and there's some nameless, faceless MBA in downtown Toronto, doesn't know Harry James, doesn't know his integrity, doesn't know his track record, that's deciding my fate. The system is completely broken. When I grew up, there used to be something called relationship lending. I had a bank manager on Scotiabank on Main Street, Markham, that stuck her neck out for me, that helped me build my family, helped me build my net worth. Unfortunately, and I feel bad because I believe I had it easier than a lot of people that are it's still capable. You can still do it, but it is a much tougher environment to build in today.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that part of that has to do with the regulations or the regulatory bodies that protect the bank's interests. And it's so important that we understand that OFSI is there to protect the banks and their balance sheet, not to protect the consumer in any
No,
which way,
the
shape,
bank
or form.
takes zero risk. Maybe they'll take a risk lending money to a third world country and never pays it back, but they're not gonna lend the money to the little guy that's or little lady that's trying to start their dream, their business. And, it's I don't know how we got there, but what's really frustrating for me is just people just accept it. You'll get turned down for a loan, and this has happened, 'cause I called the banks in one of my newsletters, the local pushers. They do this every January. A client of mine got turned down for a loan to consolidate debt at 7%. The next week, got a credit card in the mail pre-approved at 28%. Now, don't tell me that the banks don't know that all they're doing is enslaving that person to a cycle of debt at 28%, but the people have to do what they have to do to survive.
How do
And
we
these
how do we
people could
spread that message? How do you stop that?
well, I don't know, but the system is broken. There needs to be I do like credit unions a little bit more. I don't care that I have to pay a little bit more. I've got a fantastic relationship, and they didn't ask for the shout out, but I can give it to 'em. I have a fantastic relationship with Kawartha Credit Union that they're not perfect, but my goodness, they look at Harry James, they look at my track record, they look at my integrity. The manager I dealt with actually came to one of my Inspired Tuesdays, looked at our portfolio, toured my properties, and took an interest in who we were. Now, do they still have a board and a lending committee? Not sure they do, but I felt heard. I felt at least she was listening to my story and putting some credibility in what was, on the table. But I don't know what Ralph. I don't know what the answer is with the banks, but I'll tell you, it is not for the small entrepreneur. It's not for the people that have a dream that they want to have it underwritten by a bank because they're not there to underwrite it for you.
Yeah, so I think that the door was left open, when they came in with the stress test, and that was really kind of unlocked the door for the broker channels to flourish. And anybody I know that's been in private lending or in the broker channel has been making money hand over fist in terms of after the stress test was implemented, because it made an extra hoop that the big five banks had to abide by, or in order to qualify a lender, or a client, whereas in a broker channel, they don't have to follow a stress test, correct?
They do. Well,
Under the brokerage
not on the private side.
on the broker channel, do you need to are you required to follow a stress
On
test?
the brokerage side, they still have to do they got a little bit more entrepreneurial, I guess, creativity, where you really don't have to follow the stress test, and what's been very good to me is private lending. Um, I mentioned a few minutes ago, a close family friend lent me 50,000 to start my business. A close family friend lent me 50,000 to start Ross Dixon Financial on Main Street, and without him, I'm not here. Because he opened the doorway, believed in me. He got a beautiful return, by the way. There's nothing I love more than honoring people and giving them a return and putting their faith and trust in me. But what would I have done without him? What would I have done without that relationship? Now, that was 93. Uh, Today's worse. Like, so again, the power of relationships, the power of, telling your story and getting people
Do
to.
you think that that's gonna lead to classism then, or, intense classism, as we look at new Canadians that don't have, those relationships forged, and they have to follow this mainstream channel to grow your wealth?
I think the problem with what I feel bad about with new Canadians, and not just new Canadians, people that haven't got a leg up, don't have the mindset, have had like I never ever judge anybody. You look up to nobody, look down on nobody. I've always told my kids that we owe it to be kind to each other and to give each other a leg up. But those that don't have the confidence, the self-esteem, the drive, that haven't read the books, that haven't gone to the workshops, that haven't had the privileges you and I have, they become victims. They become victims. Back in my day, it was called beneficial, where they would get these people on, again, enslaved to 25, 27% interest rates. These check cashing places, for 30, 40, 50%. It should be illegal. And we're like piranhas, we're letting these people
The
feed
most
on the
vulnerable? The
most
most vulnerable.
vulnerable.
Agreed.
And these, are immigrants. I came off the boat from Scotland. These immigrants deserve respect, a leg up, an option, lending options. And I know there's some entrepreneurial people, especially in the Indigenous communities, that come up with different ways of doing that, but it is nowhere near enough. People are suffering. People can't pursue their dreams. And yeah, and listen, is it going to create a class problem? Maybe. Is it creating crime? I think so. Is it creating depression? I mean, listen, mental health and addictions is like people talk about COVID. Forget about COVID. Mental health and addictions is the real epidemic. Okay, the real epidemic. And from kids on their cell phones thinking they're not worthy and they're not good enough, to adults, who are looking back that didn't become the rock stars or don't have the money. We have a real serious, no one's talking about it. They're bearing it in drugs and alcohol and divorces or whatever else. But my goodness, there's some real issues in our society that we as entrepreneurs should try to do something about. It just becomes overwhelming because it almost feels like you're putting a splash of water on an inferno. But there's so many things that people that have the drive, they have the vision, they have the insights can do to try to make this better. Because moving forward, we have to do something to help people out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, as I look forward and, look at the world through my kids' lens, and I think, well, what kind of world will they live in? And I can fathom that. I feel a little bit scared, but I feel petrified of, like, what my kids what world will I leave them with? I mean, I pray that I'll be here to see my kids, and I wanna make sure that they can have a great life here in Canada as well. And, it's interesting as we look at different aspects of it. What's the action? Because we started off this conversation saying that ideas are worthless. It's the action. One thing that you do that, I love, I'm inspired by, is Inspired Tuesdays, which I know you've been doing for some time. And I think that was a great way to create some positive impact in the community, right? And I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more leaders in the community stand up and say, listen, we're going to work together at creating an open forum for people. Come one, come all. This may be your entryway to enter a room that you wouldn't have been able to enter, or a seat at the table that you wouldn't have had access to otherwise, or an idea that can be the seed to the next prime minister. 30 years from now, we don't know who that person is, but
Absolutely. I mean, you do this, Ralph. I can tell the way that you carry yourself. Whether it's in a group of people, an Inspired Tuesday, where you're saying, "Hey, like-minded people, let's come together." You're feeling down. You have an aging parent, you're feeling stressed out financially, you have a problem you can't solve, come on in, we've all been there. Put your ego and your net worth at the shelf, nobody cares. but let's talk together and see if we can create an energy or an insight or come up with an idea that can help you continue to move forward positively in the right direction. But it doesn't have to be in that format. I think every one of us that is wired the way that you and I are wired, and I'm sure you're like this, but I'm always trying to make people laugh or like, whether it's the person at the counter, somebody I'm passing on the street. I was at the dinner with some friends the other night. There's a beautiful older couple at the table. He was dressed like $1,000,000. I went up and complimented them. They're from England, and I sat there and talked to them, and he was showing me pictures. Human connection, encouraging other people, being kind is powerful. The human tongue is so powerful. It can stop somebody from committing suicide. You saying to somebody today, "Geez, I love your hair. What that looks amazing on you," can actually have a huge impact on their complete demeanor. And so
And the opposite's also true.
oh,
The negative one is actually probably 10x, the challenge, right?
absolutely, unleashing us. Listen, a lot of people react in a very vile way, but when the reaction outweighs the situation, it's usually a symptom of another problem. And the other problem is they're stressed, they're unhappy, they have financial difficulty, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think the more of us that are kind of tuned into recognizing and spreading that, then maybe the more it can spread. So yeah, I try to do it on Inspired Tuesdays where I'm saying, hey, look, as an entrepreneur, I've failed. As an entrepreneur, I've made a lot of bonehead mistakes. And as an entrepreneur, I've made some good decisions. I'm happy to share them with you, but I'm going to interview people that have also had. I love asking people, what was your highest moment? But really, my favorite question is, what was your lowest moment in your life and how did you overcome it? Because that's what's going to really inspire and encourage so many people. Most people won't leave themselves vulnerable and they won't tell you what's really going on. We all pretend everything's okay, but that pretending is dangerous and that pretending holds us back. So Inspired Tuesdays is about kind of taking off the mask, being vulnerable, and helping other human beings become a better version of themselves.
It's funny, the first event that I sat through, it hit a nerve for me, in a good way. When I was 15 years old, I was, selected from my high school to represent them at a leadership conference. Guidance counselor called me down, said, "Hey, we think it'd be, a great event if you go out for the day or 2 days at this event in, Jackson Point, Lake Simcoe." And I had no idea what I was getting into. Was part of the organization called HOBY, Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership. And it was amazing, absolutely incredible leadership conference. From there, they selected, 2 people to represent them, at the World Leadership Conference. They selected myself and a lady named Jennifer Sparks from Lindsay to represent Canada at a World Leadership Conference, and I was blown away. I went home, I talked to my dad and my mom. My dad's a construction worker from Argentina. My mom, is just as caring and protective as a mom as you can imagine, and they said, "Wait, you're gonna go to Indianapolis? But where are you going?" My dad, "What are you gonna go there for? What are you gonna learn in Indianapolis you can't learn here?" And by the grace of God, they said yes. And it was at that conference that was a pivot point for me because that's where I learned the seeds, the foundation of a vision, the idea of balance in life, the idea of creating inspiration through others and then finding people that are inspiring and connecting with them. And I was at that event and I remember thinking at the time in that social network, there were things like OSSSA, OELC, HOBY, and a few others. These are leadership conferences designed for high school students and maybe some university students. And I thought, there's nothing for older people. At the time, I said old. I was thinking about my parents, and I thought, there's nothing that really exists in the marketplace. I never seen any conference like this for my mom. And I thought, one day I want to host something for the moms, for the dads out there, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, that would get them just fired up, just as I was fired up at 15 years old, and I realized I have my whole life ahead of me. I want to have that same message to say, you know what, you have your whole life in front of you. Like, what could you do? Yeah, you did. Honestly, I was sitting there saying, this guy's in my head.
No, but the truth is, my next, and I've got it on my planning notes, and it's something that I have already done once, is I have a workshop that I do for people my age, and it's called Expire, Don't Retire, Age, Don't Decline. And it's about giving factual information about what's capable, what's available, what you can accomplish between 60 and 100 when you think that it's all behind. Again, a lot of it starts with attitude, perspective, but then we have concrete examples of people. I interview people that are, I mean, again, I've mentioned Bob Proctor a few times, but somebody like he was 86 or 87. He'd ripped off the top of his house. He was doing a 2,500 square foot addition. He just built $1 million TV studio. He was somebody says, why don't you retire?" And he's like, "That's just a concept that was designed that makes no sense to anything." And he also went on to say, he believed that he was healthy and vibrant and contributing and productive because he had meaning in his life and because he was doing something that he felt was really making a difference. And he also hung out with a bunch of 30 and 40-year-olds. But yeah, so I have this passion because I see so many people my age, honestly, Ralph, they've given up. They've given up. And one of the a powerful quote I heard years ago is some people get buried 30 years after they stop living. And if you live your life like you think the best is behind when you get into your 60s and 70s, that's exactly what happens. And you're also sending out the message to your body and your mind, decline. It's okay to decline. It's okay to go down. Oh yeah, I can't ski anymore. I can't walk anymore. I can't do this anymore. And then you get with a group of people that are all talking and singing from the same song sheet, and you actually accelerate the decline.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, when you look at the idea of you have your whole life in front of you, I mean, your identity changes through life. And something I didn't know at 15-year-old Ralph that, 43-year-old Ralph knows is, having kids immediately changes your perspective on everything because now they become the priority of everything. And I see it between myself, I see it through the lens of my wife, where being a parent is the first thing I am. And, being a realtor second. From there, you see the growth of your kids, and once they become sustainable, once they go on autopilot, once you've raised them to a point where they don't need you in the day to day, well, now it's like, shoot, I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up when I was a kid. I'm now a parent, that mask that took over everything of what I'm doing. And then now as my kids get older, the necessity for me dissipates and have to redefine who I am. And I'm already looking forward at that maybe 50 to 60 years old, my kids will be all in university, and I think, "Who will I be? What will I attack? What will be my beacon that I'm heading towards when Ralph is 55 years old? What will I be working towards?" Now, I'm gonna guess that it's probably grandkids or doing something great with my kids, but I wanna find some other outlet that can be outside of business, outside of, the rat race, and say, "Well, what can I do that can contribute to the lives of others?" And that's always been on my radar to say, I would like to do something like that.
Yeah, so again, this will be my opinion, but I took out an ad, when I was running Harry James Financial on the back page of the Economist and Sun. We used to take a back page out quite regularly, and I had a picture. It was actually my son because I didn't wanna pay a model, I was too cheap, and he's all freaked out, and it says, "Harry James says I have to move out." And my message was,
So funny.
You know what? Your kids are responsible for taking care of themselves. There's nothing wrong with a part-time job. The deal should be you don't live in their basement and they don't live in yours. You don't want to be dependent emotionally or financially on your children when you're older. Let them live their lives. They're in the freaking grind. They're raising kids. They got bills. They got a date. And if you're constantly getting, if your children think that your existence and your happiness depends on being involved in their lives, that's a huge burden. I want my kids to say, "Where the hell's mom and dad today? Are they in Bahamas? Are they go to Scotland? Where are they today?" And the other thing is too, getting back to health, I work out real hard because I don't want to be a burden to my children. Now, there's crap that can happen that's outside your control, but I think the healthiest relationship as you get older is you still want to have a life. You still want to have meeting. You still want to be productive. And then guess what happens counterintuitively is your kids want to be with you. They don't feel that they have to be with you. They want to be with you because you're still carving a meaningful life and living a meaningful life.
Well, this has been a meaningful conversation. Harry, I appreciate your time in joining us today and sharing your wisdom, your experience. Your thoughts are definitely unique, and I hope for everyone watching or listening that you found some value. Now, if anybody wants to follow along on your journey, is there something, a direction we can give them, a handle for social, a website, anything that if somebody says, "Oh, I love this guy, I want to just understand how to connect."
The one thing my daughter asked me to do a number of years ago, Ralph, was to start a little Instagram account. So I do little 60-second entrepreneurial videos. It was to kind of educate my kids as to who their pops was and what my philosophy was. So started that a few years ago. Harry James Live Real is the handle, and people can direct message me through there. Of course, we have HJ at Harry James Enterprises is my email address, and Harry James Enterprises is our website if they want to see some of our projects, some of our successes, but more importantly, some of our failures and what I learned through those failures. I've got some write-ups on the website. I've gotten some feedback that some people have really
And
enjoyed.
if you're ever walking around Main Street, Markham, there's probably 1 in 10 chance you're gonna catch this guy with a coffee in his hand and walking from office to office. So Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's content, make sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss another episode of Moving to Markham. And until next time, make it a great one.